Hello and welcome to Your Next Move. I'm Shrey, and with me today is Vikram Aditya, who's the co-founder and CEO of DAOlens. DAOs, or decentralized autonomous organizations, are an integral part of the Web3 infrastructure. Today, Vikram is going to explain to us the nitty-gritties of DAOs. How can you invest in them? How can you participate in the whole DAO revolution inside the Web3 space? And how can you pivot your career into upcoming DAOs? Hi, Vikram. Welcome to Your Next Move.
Hi, Shrey. Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
So, what, according to you, is a DAO? And how should somebody who has absolutely no exposure to Web3 in general look at it?
Okay. Uh, so there are a number of schools of thought, but in general, if I am being very from a high level overview, what actually a DAO is, very simply put, it's a group of people with a shared bank account. What I mean by that is like if there are five people, uh, everyone has equal access and equal say in what happens to the funds that are there in the bank account. Now, there are two, three questions. How did the funds come in the first place in the bank account? We'll talk about how DAOs manage their treasury. This bank account is obviously known as treasury. If you draw a parallel from any Web2 company or a centralized organization of sorts, what you will also see is that in a centralized company, there is usually a board available, there is usually a chief executive or a C-suite, and there are these leaders, there is a hierarchy. Even if you say it's flat, to some extent, there is a structuring and
Of course.
information flows from top to bottom. In DAOs, that gets slightly reversed because information can flow from anywhere. As a DAO member, if there were the five people in our hypothetical example of a DAO with a shared bank account, anyone can go and make a proposal. So the way decisions or directions are decided is could be Vikram goes and says, hey, I believe we should probably be launching a product that does X. And then
Mhm.
if 50% or more, 51% or more of the people in the DAO believe or are aligned to the thought that I have. So I probably have to add more details. So that is what is obviously known as a proposal in a DAO. A member can go and float a proposal with a background context, detail of what they intend to do with it. The minute that proposal gets voted, if 51% or more of the people agree, the DAO has a majority vote, and then that proposal gets accepted. Now, it's simply that everyone has an equal say, everyone has a decision on how the funds will be used, and effectively, what happens is there is another angle to it. Now, most of these DAOs, right, and I say most because there are still new DAOs coming up which are maybe not completely DAO in their essence. Most of these DAOs have something like a smart contract available at the core.
Okay.
So what that means is, let's say we have a centralized company today, and I'm evaluating you for your performance that you may have done, or let's say it's an appraisal cycle. I will have my own human judgment in it. There will be factors that I'll consider saying, hey, uh, Shrey, as much as I know whatever you did was good, this was also one of the projects that probably went in a way we had not anticipated, blah, blah, blah. I could go in and think in a number of ways.
Right.
But effectively, what happens in a DAO is you have a computer code at the center, something known as smart contract. Now, simply saying because a lot of the people who may be hearing smart contracts, and I see a lot of buzzwords flowing around, so I'll go and detail it out. Smart contract basically is just a code that says, hey, if condition A is met, do B. Right now, this condition could be anything. It could be if Shrey has submitted something and 51% of the people agree, allocate the funds to Shrey. So the DAO collectively decides that, okay, this is the smart contract and it's
Okay.
available out there in public for anyone to review. It can't
And
change overnight.
so,
Yeah.
who writes the first smart contract?
Yeah, so it's usually the way it goes is there is a founding team or a core team of the DAO that comes up, like a few people who decide that, hey, let's build a DAO out of it. It's usually a slightly bumpy ride because they are sort of like trying to fiddle around with ideas, see if people are
Right.
really finding interest in it. But usually it starts that way, that there is a core team that comes up with a smart contract, and that smart contract is made available because it shows a lot of trust, right? And it's very critical because if the smart contract has some flaws, the DAO can go haywire and a lot of things can go wrong, right?
Mhm.
So uh, in fact, once the smart contract is pushed out and the DAO starts existing in its essence, if you have to even make a small tweak to the contract, you again need a proposal because now the next tweak will sort of come with everyone or majority of the DAO agreeing that yes, this is the right direction for the overall improvement of how the DAO is functioning. So it's effectively, like, to summarize, it's effectively a group of people with a shared bank account, an equal say in decision making, so as to say proposals and voting, and then a smart contract which makes the system trustless is the word that people use because you
Right.
don't really have any human factor. Like whatever is decided will happen.
Right. And then you form a company on top of it, which does some work, right? So I mean, I have a I have a question here. Um, can I make a non-tech company? Let's say I want to have a DAO for selling T-shirts. So is that something that's possible?
Yeah. So it's a group of people, right? It could be three friends who say that, hey, we'll operate like a DAO, and that's it.
Okay.
All you need is like a shared bank account, a voting mechanism, a proposal mechanism, and if you can, like a smart contract in case, right? So you could make and then there are examples. I think there are maybe 4,000, 4,200 plus DAOs today, some of which are like core product DAOs. So the way we know Web2 companies where there are software products being built, it's a group of
Mhm.
people, and effectively, it's very similar to what has happened in the past as well, because you had tools like Mozilla Firefox and so on, which was all built in an open source manner. A group of people were coming and deciding that, okay, this is the feature we need to prioritize. DAOs have a unique social economic graph associated to it. So now, while there is a Mozilla team doing it, because Mozilla is a product that's adding value to a lot of people, you will have a treasury, you will have a group of people who could be
Mhm.
contributing in a full-time, part-time basis. So you could do anything. You could have DAOs. There are DAOs that have been built, to buy things which you could not have anticipated on buying on your own. There are DAOs that are just there to support guilds. There are DAOs that are media DAOs. For example, whatever you see these media companies, they start collating everything that's out there. There are DAOs, like for example, one of the OGs DAOs is like Friends with Benefits, FWP, and it's just a group of people with shared values, culture. They come together, they believe in the same thing, they hang out, they do a bunch of things. Very interesting examples. So yeah.
Okay. And how does the team size increase?
Yeah. So that's again an interesting like observation or sort of like thing to observe right now as DAOs are maturing. Honestly, see, DAOs are not that old. Like the
Mhm.
first DAO itself came in 2016. There was a lot of noise around whether that was right, wrong. I remember distinctly around 2018, 19, a lot of people were saying, hey, it's democracy in its best form. Let's replace governments with them. And it used, or it felt like a tall claim at that point in time. A lot
Mhm.
of people I honestly even know have said that, yeah, it was a big turn off moment because you're trying to achieve something before even establishing that DAOs could do. But I think around 2020, 2021, a new wave of DAOs started coming up where there were people, there were enough number of tools to support people thinking in the right way about how could a group of people come together and make something work. And that is when examples started popping up, right? So now there are DAOs that could probably be three people as well, uh,
Mhm.
or there could be DAOs that have 100,000 people at the same time. Now, in terms of team size, there's something usually on the form of whether the DAO wants to gate who gets to be a member of the DAO. And what I mean by gate is they could come and say, hey, Shrey, you can't really be a member of the DAO who can, participate in governance, governance being the term around voting proposals and so on, unless you have a skin in the game, which is to say, hey, you have purchased 20 FWB tokens or 10 FWB tokens. That is when you get to be a part of FWB as a community. Otherwise, you can maybe join their Discord,
Right.
see what is happening, but you really can't participate. So gradually, now if you're a gated DAO, more and more people can go join you. And
Mhm.
then gradually, if you have got the tokens, you can basically just become a member and the DAO size can grow to as large as it wants to be. There are some other
Okay.
DAOs that come and say, hey, we will like, really cap it at 100 people, 200 people, because we want this to be very meaningful. And there are a group of communities, like I think there's one that is not known as the Zunto.xyz,
Mhm.
ZUNTO.xyz. They are just a group of very well-known people coming together, the likes of who's who, coming together and discussing things around the future of Web3, the protocols, the decisions that are happening, which direction, right? So it's not really a DAO in its own sense today, but still a group of people coming together. There are some DAOs that are open for everyone, so you could go just join. There is no need of a token. And
Okay.
what you will see is as the organization starts getting complex, there are a lot of people who will come and say, hey, Shrey, why don't we break this DAO into a sub DAO of its sorts? So basically, the way you have these pods or teams in traditional Web2 companies, there's one main DAO, but there are these sub DAOs, and every sub DAO operates like a DAO of its own. So you have your own treasury, you have your own members in the team
Mhm.
who have voting power related to the decisions that affect that particular group of people.
Right.
And that's how usually the organization keeps scaling. So,
Right. And how does a DAO get funded?
okay, so there are n number of ways. And again, very popular, unpopular opinions, conflicts on what people believe is right or wrong. But effectively, it could simply be when I'm putting a gating mechanism. I'm
Mhm.
saying, hey, you need to, like probably purchase this NFT or this token to be a member of this DAO. At that point in time, you get entry into the world of DAO. And whatever you have submitted, that goes as the DAO treasury, which is available for everyone to see. And then you can float a proposal and use that treasury. So, what is the goal of a DAO? At the end, most of the DAOs, in some way or the other, aspire to increase the size of their treasury. So
Mhm.
let's say we have all collected $1 million, we want it to go to 10, so that as a whole we all are benefiting, right? Like everyone is reaping the rewards there. But there could also be other ways, like there are people who are progressively moving into a DAO like structure. So it could be a traditional company where you have a venture capital person coming in or a VC coming and saying, hey, uh, we we participated in your pre-seed round or seed round. We have 20% of the stake. So when you're moving us into a DAO, we effectively get the equal number of tokens. There are n number of ways again in which people really want to decide how much of an ownership you give to these investors. And the DAO, the core fraternity or the OG DAO fraternity, always will you see them siding with DAOs that have not gone the traditional VC route, because then the decision making is more decentralized because there's not one person with 20% or 10% of the votes,
Right.
like one person or as in one entity. But there is another angle to it as well. Most of these DAOs that have like VC involvement, you will see VCs like rarely participating also to that extent in the core day-to-day activity. So it's a mixed school of thoughts, but whatever be your way of raising funds, you whatever has happened in the Web2 world still carries forward and holds true. Uh, and yes, of course, you have now interesting avenues like a DAO could come and fund you, which is to say one DAO has a say instead of a VC coming in. A DAO itself is acting as a venture DAO, and the DAO comes and gives you the fund. It's a group of people who will effectively try to help you, just like the way a traditional VC will.
Right. And as a first-time investor, what kind of DAOs should I be looking at? Is there like a list of all-star DAOs, like the bases of DAO world, or let's say
Yeah,
CryptoPunks of the DAO world? Are there things like that?
yeah. So it is a very like hot area right now in the DAO ecosystem, right? Like where discovery is a massive problem. So I like when we were trying to build DAOlens, we were trying to go into maybe 300, 400 random conversations with founders and builders, trying to understand, hey, why are you building what you're even building? How does it even make sense? And honestly, that was like Apoor was my co-founder, and I, the two of us, we were just fiddling around with how to make sense of whatever these DAOs are, because both of us had been in the sector since 2015, but it was
Right.
still like getting a little overwhelming in terms of you would go to a website of a DAO, see a four-pager explainer, see terms being thrown like, hey, trying to position scalability as global public utility. Now, these are terms that all make sense, but only to the
Mhm.
people who have coined them in the first place, right?
Right.
So, for a random person, specifically the people who are not really familiar with things like MetaMask, private key, and a lot of people are saying we need to drive the adoption higher in DAOs. The problem is that the adoption will not really increase if you don't have things sorted for a person who may not really have ever seen it. So, what I'm coming to is today the unfortunate or like the real answer to whether you can discover a DAO is you just basically go to their website, start looking at their Discord, start browsing through what has been
Mhm.
happening. And it gets frustrating because a lot of these terms you will not be able to understand. If you, for
Right.
example, go join a Discord server, there are 200 channels. You don't really know which channel is the one where there is n number of things happening. And effectively, the only way is you start showing up on community calls. So every
Right.
DAO meets on a weekly basis. The whole community gets together to say, hey, we really want to make sense of what's happening, what's the progress. Hey, Shrey, you were looking at number A, what is the progress? Where are we? Do you need help? And so on, right? It's like an all hands meeting in a traditional company. But what happens is, unless you go into those meetings, you will not really be able to understand who are the core people, who are the people who are like leading these tracks, who you could ping and try and ask, like, hey, can I help you? It's effectively like you're thrown on a floor to
Mhm.
shake hands with 200, 3,000, 5,000 people, whatever number of people there are in the DAO, and asked to go and say, like, hey, go figure out what they have been doing, request them if they have openings for you, ask them if they would pay you, and if there is an alignment, you start working, right?
Right.
So, which is why, and then there are some people now who are trying to collate it. In fact, even on the DAOlens website, there is a discovery tab where the simplest intent was like, hey, it's getting very frustrating. And honestly, when we put together that, we had no business model whatsoever in mind. It was simply, can we really go on and index it in a way where you can go and then look at it and understand what the DAO does in a very non-technical, non-jargony
Do you want to show the website? Do you want to just take
Oh,
us through?
I could do that. 1 second. I'll just bring my screen up.
Yeah, sure. You should be able to share your screen.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, I can.
Uh,
So, can you see it
are
now, Shrey?
you able to? Yes. Yes, I can see it.
Perfect. So I'll talk about what we do at a later point in time exactly at
Okay.
DAOlens. But what I'm right now really talking, so the website is DAOlens.com, and what we are really talking about at this point is like this tab, Discover. So this was what we built the first day we built. We were running into these DAOs and we were like, hey, if I'm going to this DAO, which is called the Cabin DAO, what does the DAO really even do? Right? Like
Hmm.
like what is the DAO doing? How do you join the DAO? What can you work on after you have joined the DAO? And can I really even tell what people are saying about what their experience was contributing for this DAO? And of course, some basic details of whatever has happened in the past. But what I'm effectively coming to is that there are these n number of DAOs, and of course, you can browse it saying, okay, I only want to look at the social DAO, the DAOs that are investment DAOs and service DAOs. But even this list, right? It's
Hmm.
like a fraction or it's like a surface level uh, thing what you see when it comes to the number of DAOs that exist. And there will be a few other tools also that are trying to do it. But unfortunately, the answer right now also is like you could come and browse through things here. You could go look at the link to join the Discord from inside the detail page. But
Right.
effectively, you go in and consider what these people they are trying to do when they are really looking at something on the lines of, hey, tell me whether I should be joining the DAO. The way you make that decision today in a traditional Web2 company is more on the lines of, hey, who are these people that I'm going to be working with? What is
Hmm.
the DAO going to be doing? What does the roadmap look like? Am I really going to feel that it's a transparent thing? There are all of these things that people come with saying, oh, we want to make an equal opportunity related work environment for everyone. But does the DAO really have that at the soul or at the core? And for that, we also believe that ideally, and this is something which I really don't show to anyone else, but I will float around to you. We were actually trying to sort of like explain what the future may be looking like. And our analysis was that maybe you will have something like this, where whatever
Hmm.
you see here as a graph, right? Like, hey,
Oh, wow.
in terms
Okay.
in terms of payout, in terms of core team, this is how the DAO is believing. You have something on the lines of what you see on Glassdoor, where people are coming and leaving reviews saying, hey, this
Right.
is what my experience been working for this DAO. There are some pros and cons. You can see who are the people. You can see the opportunities that are available in that DAO. And these opportunities can be in the form of gigs or bounties, which are like short-term things, or it could also be, hey, there's a full-time position available for you. And it was just honestly, just think about it for a second. When you are joining a DAO, it's more about a lot of psychological factors, right? And can you really answer that psychological factor? So this was an attempt that we were making at Dowlands in terms of understanding, okay, can we really go and then present information in a way to someone where they will look at it and get an immediate decision in terms of, do I really want to join it? Do I feel like,
Right.
because honestly, today you join a DAO, you scroll through all the channels in Discord, it gets messy because there are maybe 20 of them buzzing all the time. And if you're trying
Hmm.
5 DAOs out, and it may be too late by the
I
time
think
you
it's the
pull
same
back.
thing with the NFT projects as well. I did join a few Discord communities, but then I'm not really able to keep in touch with the amount
Yeah,
of
yeah,
messages that come through.
yeah. You look like we actually were trying to understand the problem, right? Like, and this is like this person goes, Jack is like the like he built Cabin DAO. He's saying like, hey, this week someone joined our DAO, did what they were supposed to do. It's that's how it's supposed to work, but it's still pretty shocking when it actually does. And it is shocking. I say that because I have been on the other
Right.
side where people come and you're like, oh, it's working the way it was supposed to work, right? You'll see like here they're talking about the problems like, hey, there's no class store of DAOs for beginners to browse.
Yeah.
Discord absolutely lacks context. And in Web3, one core thing, Shrey, is like everything can result into a reward, right? Like the some of the
Hmm.
most beginner people go in and say, hey, crypto is equal to Web3. Then they realize that, oh, Web3 has a lot of like blockchain has a lot of applications. So they change their stand. And
Right.
then they again realize that no, everything is at the core of how people are getting incentivized and how the network can grow. So they again go and make a statement. But what I'm coming to is like, you see the problems. It's not just us saying that it's a problem, it's a lot of people talking about it. That, hey, what's the vision? Who's who? How are you even organized? See, like Cooper is like a legend when it comes to DAOs. He says like, hey, and then this is effectively what you're supposed to do. It's as subjective as it sounds. Go take notes in meeting, participate in these conversations, engage in as many proposals as you can. Try to gain a social reputation so that when
Right.
you're trying to like make a proposal on your own, there is enough number of people who you could rally behind yourself. I'll stop sharing for now. We could again come back to it if there is a need at a later point in time. But this is how we started. And coming back to your question in terms of what are these DAOs that you could join, you could probably browse something like Darlens and land on one, or you could just like it's a journey of discovery, and there are solutions being worked on right now, but nothing is still a complete solution on its own. So we spent a good amount of time trying to detail out why this may be the future or what is really the ecosystem going to evolve into, and we have our own hypothesis there. But from there, we ran into a host of other problems that these DAOs were facing around onboarding, activation, project management. Like, why are there these many people? Like, there are companies that are coming and saying, "Hey, we'll help you in upskilling yourself. We'll help you in, discovery of gigs and bounties that will make sense." And we're like, okay, if they are going to be doing this, what is the ecosystem going to look like in 2 years from now?
Hmm.
Which one should be our wedge of entry? And from there, we decided that, okay, onboarding and activation of a new contributor and project management that follows from the DAO admin end is what we really want to get into. But I can talk about it at a later point in time.
Yeah, I get your point. I'm just trying to figure out like once I join a DAO. Okay, let me ask you another question. Uh, do you have any example of a product that is being sold, or let's say a business that is being built on a DAO?
Oh yeah, a lot of them. So you see, like any DAO, right? Today, a traditional company uses n number of tools. You are using something for human resource management, you're using something for compensation, you're using something for equity, you're using something for communication, be it on the lines of Slack and so on, everything, right? Now, when you move to a DAO, you still need these tools to function, right? So
Mhm.
a DAO exists, but how would you really define what your treasury size is, where the spend is going to go, how will you keep track of the account, how will you keep track of these proposals that are coming in, where is the historical record for everything? So there are n number of people who are working on tools that themselves are a DAO, right? For example, and when I say they themselves are a DAO, they may be a DAO in part time or like a partial sense. For example, you're saying like, hey, we really want to be treasury management tool. For example, there's a tool called Gnosis, which is it's spelled Gnosis, and it's being used for treasury management. There are tools like Parcel Money. They're all effectively trying to operate as a DAO themselves, right? And every tool for that matter, when it comes to compensation management, when it comes to people management, governance management, they are all trying to, like, for example, Aragon, which effectively is a tool that helps you like launch a DAO on its own on the very first thing. Or there are tools like, hey, there's a tool called Colony, which is trying to help you do a lot around um, how the proceeds of the meetings are following, where like keep a track of things more on the lines of project management, something overlapping with Notion and so on. They are all effectively DAOs themselves as well. So it's a bunch of DAOs that are trying to position themselves as a stack of tools that are available for anyone who's building a DAO to use today. And trust me, there are maybe 100 of them today.
Got it. And there would certainly be some DAOs that are like whose core businesses are not Web3, but I mean, because I guess that's what a DAO is about, right? Like your core business could be anything, but the way decision making is structured in the organization is decentralized, and that's why it's called a DAO, right? I mean,
Bingo, bingo. So I'll tell you. Now this is a very good thing. We should actually spend 2 minutes here. Uh, a lot of these people, right? Like they don't understand what a DAO is doing because unfortunately, the most common example of a DAO out there is still an investment DAO. But if we take a step back and look at the kind of DAOs that are already existing there are things like developer collectives, right? It's just like hosting a bunch of developers who have made collaboration through tools like GitHub and whatever, right? So there are examples like Badger DAO, Gitcoin, API 3, which are like more on the lines of developer collectives. You have something like worker collectives as well, which is like, hey, everyone in the Gen Z and whatever happened in the world post COVID, which was like, hey, we want freedom in our own life. So it's a bunch of people coming and saying, hey, people like DORG, it's spelled DORG, Raid Guild, and so on, coming and saying, hey, we'll just like we want to get paid better, but we want freedom in where we are working from, what we are working on. Imagine what happens. Why is effectively a DAO even a better thing than a traditional company? Now,
mhm.
if Shrey, you're working today in a traditional company, and let's say you built a product that is bringing in 1 billion in ARR, right? You had some contribution in doing that, or maybe 5 million in ARR. You all you got was maybe a performance bonus and a fixed salary. DAOs are basically questioning the basis of it, coming and saying, hey, Vikram helped bring 5 million on an annual basis. Where is my royalty? Shouldn't I be getting 0.01, 0.05, whatever percent of the 5 million as long as you keep earning, right? Now, it's a very tough argument to beat because, yeah, it is true. I helped you build it in the first place. I should get rewarded. There are DAOs which are coming and like going and then it's very interesting. Like, for example, if you're working for a traditional company, again, the day you stop working, your health benefits sort of end, right? There are DAOs coming and saying, oh, you've contributed for 2 years. Why can't you have a perpetual health benefit as long as you hold some tokens or whatever? right? There is this idea of liquid super teams. Imagine your college friends, the best of the people you have worked with, or your school friends, coming together, working on a project. Today, all of them are probably working for different companies, and most of them will probably never end up working for the same in one go. But DAOs make it possible. I could be sitting on a beach in Portugal and like sipping on some cocktail or mocktail and just be doing my thing, which I really enjoy doing. So if I'm a content writer, I'm not really gonna work on slides. If I'm a salesperson and I don't really want to get involved with engineering, I'll float a proposal that gets me involved only, or I'll participate in projects where my task is only related to what I've done. And the best part, if you're thinking right now, is who will actually evaluate that the salesperson did what they were supposed to do. You only get compensated in a DAO once you have delivered your promise, right? So if you said you would do something, it's not like you'll get a salary. If you
Right.
said you do something and you do it, you would actually be able to get rewarded for it.
And
Some
who
DAOs,
decides that? The community. Like the community votes on all these things and decide it.
so the community votes on it, and in ideal case, it should all be linked to a smart contract because the work that you are doing should be, like readable on chain, and there should be a code that does it. That's
Of
ideally the
course.
vision that everyone is working towards. But today, yes, there's a lot of like these core team members who understand how the DAO works, what sort of projects have backfired in the past. They are the ones who are making a decision. But that is again like gonna get more decentralized as things mature. Like some of the best brains in the world of Web3 today, and I can probably even go and then make a bold claim here that some of the best people today from the world of Web2 are migrating to Web3, and they
Yeah,
are
of
all
course. Yeah.
collectively working towards maturing the whole ecosystem. But coming back to the type of DAOs, right? Like we said, developer collectives, virtual collectives. There are art collectives, of course. Everything that you see in NFTs, big DAOs again. Like Pleaser DAO is like a phenomenal case study. You should, like anyone who's listening to it, you should go in and check out how Pleaser DAO came into existence. It's spelled Pleasr, Pleaser DAO. There are community collectives, you have social media, you have asset management as a DAO class. Of course, venture capital, where there is a treasury, people with their own shared background, so a hive mind of sorts, coming and saying, hey, I know this stuff. I'm going to tell you this company is good or bad from this lens. And when there are 200 people evaluating, someone has an economics background, someone has a psychology background, someone has a development background, you will end up making decisions that are very effective because you use the best of the pool that you had available. There are things around social tokens and fan ownership, everything you see, fantasy leagues, things on those lines. So that are examples of DAO. You have crowdfunding projects, right? Like, so for example, there is a DAO called Vita DAO. There's something called Galaxy. It's spelled C Calcutta or CAT, CALAXY. So where creators can issue their own tokens, much like a human IPO. There are nomad communities that are thinking. So nomad community now, imagine, and this is not true, but imagine if Airbnb was to be made into a DAO today,
Right.
and all of us are living in Toronto, and we are saying, hey, every person who is an Airbnb host is sort of this sub DAO, which is in Toronto. Now, the way it would work is like if Shrey says that your house needs to be repainted because you believe that is gonna overall benefit the Toronto DAO sub DAO community, you would float a proposal. You'd go in and say, I want to paint my house red because these are the benefits, blah, blah, blah. And this is a very weird example, by the way.
Yeah, of course, of course. Yeah.
But effectively, Airbnb subbed out vote. If people in Toronto agree to it, a treasury will disperse the funds to you. You can get the house painted. You will come and say, hey, this is it's done, and that's how the DAO keeps on evolving, right? So while that is happening, because you are a sub DAO member, you could also decide the policies that Airbnb should have in sub, like Toronto. You could go in and say, hey, we'll make the fifth night free for everyone. If you as a community believe that is the right decision, you could go in and say, you know what, we would only take crypto payments. Like you as a community decide what you want to do, and there's not someone sitting in San Francisco making the decision for you
Right.
uh, as a
Right.
policy. So media, politics, n number of examples, but yeah,
Yeah,
we'll
of
come
course.
to
Yeah, it's just, I mean, once you have your thinking cap on and you understand how a DAO kind of
yeah.
works or how DAOs can actually work and the various tools that you have in hand, the various kind of new digital structures that are being built around some of these things, Um, for example, smart contract itself is I mean, it's a very liberating thing. I was talking to somebody the other day, and I was speaking about royalties, like artist royalties and writer royalties, like author royalties for books. Um, like mostly, a lot of authors face this problem that their publisher comes back and says that we've sold X number of copies, and they have no way to kind of validate this claim. And often publishers actually report a much lesser number, a much lower number
Wow.
than the copies that are sold, and hence you have absolutely no the author has absolutely no way to go about it. The second is that a book has a lot of illustrations. It could have photographs. It could have quotes. And what if a book does not just pay its author, but with a smart contract, a lot more people can get paid automatically? And I was just kind of discussing this with someone the other day. So once people start discovering these sort of tools at hand, some of which you just mentioned, then it just becomes so much more liberating. Like I understood kind of what DAOs could do, but now that you've told me how decision making works, I guess it's just how you start thinking about this whole ecosystem in the first place. The technicals obviously follow after that.
Yeah, and I'll throw some numbers here, right? So we spent like in the month of October, November, December before starting Dowlands, we spent a good time pinging people, anyone who had written Web3, crypto, DAOs on their profile, and we didn't know we were going to narrow down on uh, DAOs per se. Effectively, like the conclusion of those chats with 300 or so odd founders was someone coming and saying, "Hey, we are using something like Tenderly. These are a bunch of developers. Tenderly is bad. Can you do what Postman did to the world of Web 2 through something like Tenderly 2.0? It's a $1 billion opportunity sitting right there, right? Someone came and said, "Hey, we are trying to do MetaMask on Terra ecosystem." And then you'd ask them questions of why do you really want to build MetaMask on
Right.
Terra? What is the future? And they have their own logic, right? It all makes sense. Effectively, there are maybe 7, 8 themes that are emerging in the world of Web3. We actually talk about it in one of our blogs, but it's more on the lines like things like, hey, of course there is uh, the topic of the year or the last year per se, metaverse. There is the rise of social tokens that are coming in. There are things like, hey, what are you doing around NFT? There are n number of protocols being built. When I say protocol, like a lot of the people in the world of Web3 are still working on, can I make things interoperable with chains? Can I make them scalable? Can I work on throughput? There are, of course, I talked about Tenderly, which falls under the bucket of dev tool and infrastructure. So a lot
Right.
of what you also talk in DAOs or these tools that are coming up, there are also infrastructural openings. DeFi is still a sector. There are consumer apps coming on blockchain. And what I'm coming to is when we were talking to these people, there were three reasons why we landed on DAOs. Of course, in the process of all of this and given our context over the years, Apurv and I, we were like, hey, we resonate a lot with the philosophy and the ideology that DAOs are. Probably we're never going to work for a centralized company again.
Right.
Uh, but on top of that, there were two things. Of course, another angle is like from a business POV that we have done SaaS. So if you come and tell me, Vikram, go build a dating app on blockchain, as much as it might really be needed for advantages that it brings, I really don't know how to distribute that, right? But the thing that hit us the most was almost 75-80% of the people or these Web3 founders said they were thinking of structuring their community as a DAO, right? If not now, then in the next year and a half. And that speaks loudly because there are projections saying there will be 250,000 DAOs by 2025, 2030, different things. But when 80% of the founders, and we had picked a random subset, like 0.0001% of the people building in Web3,
Right.
speaks volumes about where DAOs are headed. Effectively, maybe in 3 years, everyone listening to this is going to be working for a DAO. There are things like, hey, why do you have to really work with just one company? You could work for five at the same time because this narrative of, oh, I'm bored at my workplace. That's no
Right.
longer relevant in a DAO. You decide what you want to work on, and the consensus is that you will work for 4 to 5 companies for 4 to 5 hours every week from wherever you want to in the world at your own
Right.
term. Decide how much you want to get paid. All you need to do is convince a bunch of people. So, and now as I'm talking to people in the Web2 world as well, we are seeing narratives of traditional Web2 communities thinking of moving on the lines of, a DAO. They're like, hey, I have 1.5 million active subscribers, paying subscribers. I want to move into a DAO, and they have their own logic or reasoning behind why. It may not be really very solid at this point in time, but there are shifts happening where effectively we foresee that there's going to be a job meltdown. So Shrey, the conclusion, and I think this is something I would definitely want to talk about for anyone who's listening here. There are maybe three, four broader problems that the world of DAOs are facing. One is like, hey, how do you discover? And we talked at length about it. How do you actually discover a DAO? But once you have discovered a DAO, it gets very tricky to like really get used to or get accustomed to how that DAO is functioning in the first place. What I mean by that is like, hey, this DAO I have joined. Now all I'm being said is like I'm thrown in a Discord server, and there are these DAOs that go in and say scroll the hell out of these channels to figure out what has been happening. It's messy. There are like 15,000 people in certain DAO servers, but you will see 70, 80, 100 people showing up on community calls. Why? What happened to the rest of the folks? So there's this problem of onboarding and activation, right? Then the third is, okay, I am activated now. Help me become an effective contributor. And that effective contribution is more on the lines of, okay, can you really help me discover more gigs? Can you help me upskill myself? Can you, maybe, is it okay if I like bring some visual here for people to understand?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, that'll be helpful.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think this is just, it's not really, uh, it may be a very fluid way of looking at, like, what I mean by that is we have thought of that, okay, maybe there are four buckets that we are also realizing that maybe it is all getting broken down into three buckets, two buckets, right? Like you have overlaps here. But effectively, the third pillar that I was talking about was how do you make people effective contributors, right?
Right.
What I mean by that is like, hey, I'm getting paid. Now, effective contribution can mean n number of things. Uh, you are supposed to write a proposal. Where is the Grammarly that is looking at the data that a DAO has in terms of the proposals that were accepted, approved, rejected? Which is evaluating, saying, Shrey, your proposal is 80 on 100 on how likely it is to get approved. You're
Right.
going to get in this random token. Can I hedge your risk by redistributing it across a bunch of stable coins and so on, right? So this whole idea of how do you make someone effective as a contributor, and then the last leg is when there is the job meltdown, when people realize that DAOs are a taste of freedom. And the reason I say that is you could be a freelancer uh, working for something like Fiverr today, making 50 to $100 designing t-shirts in a day, or you could be joining a DAO and writing three Twitter threads, make $1,500, $1,000 in like 1.5, 2 hours, and go your own way. The saturation will like come gradually, and the payment will go down for sure. Today there's
Right.
no not a lot of people who are doing it, but effectively when that happens, when people still realize it's a better way of working, at that point in time every company is going to be on the lines of, hey, help me move into a semi DAO like model where you have to contribute to get rewarded. And then we detail it out. Like I have a fair clue of what each of these pillars expand into. That is again us
Hmm.
trying to like think what are these things that you could eventually get into. And this is all from a business pop, but what we are working on right now is mostly around onboarding. We are looking at a lot of these DAOs. They are like, hey, I have a bunch of custom tools today, right? Like I am using a bunch of custom tools. uh, so what we are saying is whatever is your gateway of entry, right? Like, can we really become the first step that activates the person who is joining your DAO? So we will integrate with your custom stack, and you as a DAO admin, don't you really don't have to worry about how things should be structured. You may have your own flow for how a newcomer should come in, but effectively there is a way of presenting the information to them. Maybe you want them to join some mandatory community calls. Maybe you want them to do some gig, Maybe you want to activate them. Maybe you want them to read the proposals that have happened in the past so that they are not just lurkers. Because effectively, no one wins if there are 15,000 people sitting in a server and only 60 showing up on calls. The remaining 4940, they anyway never really cracked what they were supposed to do. So maybe they
Right.
didn't win there in the first place, or maybe there were 200 people who wanted to contribute, but they couldn't contribute. So we are like, okay, can we really go in and integrate with your custom stack and bring out these custom blocks of information, which is available for you? So the details of how we do this is all on the website, and we are actually live with a few DAOs. Uh, we are seeing phenomenal response. Now we are seeing people saying, oh, you are helping us onboard and, at the same time activate people. Can you really go and then help me also do project management? Which is to say, as an admin, and just take a step back straight, it's a two-way problem,
Hmm.
right? Like it's a two-way problem because when you run into a DAO, you don't know what the DAO does, but the DAO also doesn't know what you do,
Yep.
right? And I'm gonna talk about something that's gonna be remarkable now, with like how things could evolve in future. There's something on the lines of an on-chain profile.
Hmm.
So today you have a resume or
Right.
you have something on LinkedIn, and you're like, hey, we really don't know whether that person, whatever they have written, whether it's true or false, right? Like
Absolutely.
whatever they have written, it could be anything. But the way blockchain works is whatever is stored on the blockchain, it's most likely correct unless 51% of the people conspired to. There's something called 51% attack. Let's not really get into the granularities, but
Right. Right.
unless everyone conspires to make it wrong, whatever is there on the blockchain is most likely right. So as you are contributing in your life, as Vikram worked in the previous companies he has worked on, why do I even have to make a pitch to
Right.
other people, right? Going and saying, hey, you know
So it's like a
what?
portfolio that's getting ready as and when you're working.
It's a reputation. And
Right.
the
Right.
future is going to be you apply to a job, there's a smart contract that knows that, okay, if these conditions are met, maybe I can roll out an offer letter. And the minute these, like you look at the on-chain profile, you see that, okay, these credentials are immediately trustable because they are sitting on the blockchain. You roll out an offer letter in 2 minutes from the minute the person has applied. There need not be any interview because your contribution speaks volumes for you, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
from
That
there,
that's phenomenal. Yeah.
yeah. So it's interesting because now if I start doing that at Darlens, I can effectively like be the baseline for your on-chain reputation to get generated. And from there, I can also route people saying, Shrey, this is where you belong. This is where you should be working, right? So project management, now it's a two-way problem because DAOs also don't understand what Shrey has done. I may be looking for a designer all my life as a DAO admin, and you may be a designer who have walked in. But I have no way of knowing that because you walked into a server like Discord where I have no way of figuring out. So can we really bridge that two-way problem so that the DAO admins also know who is getting onboarded, what are they good at, what are they bad at, and internal project management. So that's some of the things which we are working on, seeing very good response. But I think I digressed a little bit as well. So yeah,
No, it was pretty valuable. So this is kind of what you're doing at Dowlands right now. I am getting it, and I guess like anybody listening to this podcast should definitely go to Dowlands and check out what's happening there.
yeah,
Um,
yeah, definitely. Like what's a little overwhelming for us is like we are seeing because these people they work for 4 to 5 DAOs at the same time. There are people
right.
who are realizing that okay, this is a tool I really want to use. And then they go in and float a proposal on our behalf in their new DAO or the third DAO that they're working for, where we really didn't even know that there was a need at this point in time because we are still early. We are co-building with these DAOs, so the tool also comes free of cost for anyone who's willing to try. At least for the next 3 4 months, there's going to be a subscription model thereafter. But
Right.
yeah, so
Right. And so my last question would be, how does somebody get into a DAO as a contributor if they're not from the engineering, domain?
oh, absolutely. So there are n number of gigs available, right? Like so, these gigs could be somebody is just asking you to write a Twitter thread because they are asking you to brand or like detail out what they are doing as a DAO, right? So when you go to these DAOs, each of these DAOs have their gig or bounty board. Now, these gigs or bounties may be listed inside their server, or you may just go in and attend their community call to understand what is going on. Or it may also be on some of these tools like Layer 3, right? Where they have like where they go in and look at these gigs or bounties that are available across a bunch of DAOs and make it available for people. But you could be a content writer, you could be a movie director, you could be a songwriter, you could be like someone who's very good in creating playlists, you could be a designer, you could be anyone, you could be someone who's good in management, you could be a venture capital person, you could be someone with a sports background. There are gigs available for everyone at this point in time, right? Like you could go in and do whatever you want to. And the best part is if you prove you are good at it, whether you were a developer or a designer in your past life doesn't really matter, because at the end of the day, if you can get a gig done, you will get paid for it because there's a contract sitting. And these payments are also very handsome. Like some people go and join a DAO full time as an early stage employee, saying like, hey, we are going to be working, helping you build it. And then they have some sort of a compensation because they're helping build the DAO. They become sort of the core team, which has like a skin in the game
Sure.
through tokens. But otherwise as well, you could just go join a DAO. And effectively the way it works is, now the trick is, if the DAO is a gated DAO, you will of course have to buy the token or whatever is needed to be a part of it. But a very good place to look at what are the kind of works that this DAO is doing is maybe go to this tool called Snapshot. It's
Hmm.
SNAPSHOT, and look at what are these proposals that are getting floated across these DAOs. And that will give you an idea of, oh, looks like this DAO is working on project management. Oh, looks like this DAO is working on developer collaboration, communication, reputation, whatever, right? And from there, you decide that, okay, this is the DAO I really want to get into. So even if there is a token, you go in, and trust me, you will be able to recover whatever you spend very fast, because the rewards are insane right now in DAOs. That's mainly because not a lot of people have discovered. So there are people who are working full time for DAOs, 5, 6 DAOs. They are making to the tune of a Bay Area salary, sitting
Okay.
somewhere in Malaysia or Indonesia, right?
Sure.
And it's just phenomenal, because at the end of the day, the DAO is benefiting. Sometimes you don't even know who did the project for you, because it's an anonymous person in the name of a wallet that is sitting behind. But the work is really good, because once the work was approved, that is only the compensation went through. It's a little tricky discovering these gigs, but honestly, the answer for anyone who's feeling overwhelmed with, oh, there are so many DAOs where to get started, is go join one DAO, engage in communities, because today you will still have to get that social reputation. I wish we at Towlens can work towards changing it, and we are actually working on changing it as fast as we can so that it's not that seamless. But there are phenomenal people like DAOs that are working in the biotech space coming and saying, hey, we will work on the future of biotech. We will work, it's an intersection of biotech and crypto. It's an intersection of economics and media. It's an intersection of, health and climate. So if you're like, just go discover one DAO, spend time with them. If you're absolutely new, maybe 10 days engaging with everyone on the community, browsing through messages on Discord, responding to people on calls, on comments. And then you will realize that there is a core person. Just go ask that core community member saying, hey, I am this person. I really want to participate in this gig. Can you tell me how I can help you? They are actually desperately in need of help. Most of these DAOs, there are people who they are looking for to take on these gigs, which is why you will get paid as well handsomely for doing something you absolutely love. And I mean it. Like you could actually just go play a game, or like do whatever it is that you really wanna do, and still get rewarded for that. Which is the beauty of Web3, which is why I think the
Well,
future will be very strongly Web3.
wow, that was pretty interesting, Vikram. And this was for any listener who's who's interested in Web3 and who's interested in DAOs. I think they can surely check some of these DAOs out, join their Discord, understand how things are going. What are the mechanics of a DAO? Who are the core committee members of a DAO? And um, maybe just speak with them, have some sort of connect with them, and figure out what kind of gigs are available.
Yeah.
Probably
Yeah.
that's a good starting point.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a brilliant starting point. The only thing I would leave the last message of sorts is like it is a little ambiguous, but it's okay. If you hold on for a while, you will see that you will be one of the first few people who start understanding things the way no one else does, because everyone is equally lost, honestly. And that's the beauty. Like the ecosystem is like maybe on year 3, year 4 of what DAOs are today. Maybe technically it started in 2016, but from there, where we'll go to, the future is very bright. So just hold on, bear with the ambiguity, and you will make your way through. Don't, if you really at any point in time feel that, oh, I am the like person who's not really getting anything, trust me, it's a feeling everyone is going through. But the best thing is like some of the best people in the world are working towards fixing it. So in a year and a half, DAOs are going to get more mainstream. Imagine 80% of the companies, like these founders that I spoke to, they are seed stage people, right?
Right.
Like they will build, many of them will go on to build unicorns. If a unicorn like Polygon, for example, just launched a DAO arm of its own, and so on. So there are like these big shifts that are happening, and they
Right.
should, because that's the right way to move forward. But yeah,
Awesome. Thanks a lot, Vikram, for all these wonderful insights into the whole DAO space.
thank you, Shrey. Thank you for having me. I really hope it benefits, even if like 1% of the people get benefit. It makes my day. And anyone has any questions, you could always reach out to me wherever you want. Like I am obviously active on Twitter, not per se in terms of posting, but I'll respond to you. I'm available at Viksram, VIKS underscore RUM. Uh, I am available at vikram@talents.com. Anyone at any point in time, like it's really very pleasing and very satisfying helping people on board in the world of DAOs. So happy to help wherever, whenever I can.
Thanks a lot, Vikram. Have a good day.
Thank you, Shrey. It's a pleasure meeting you.